This is the WholEarth Game program. Because everything depends on it.
Doesn't that intro just make you feel like we're going on to the big field? Doesn't that intro just make you feel like we're just ready to go into some new territory? Because if you're here and you're watching this and you're playing the game, you are ready to zoom into some new territory. So welcome to the Play WholEarth Game Show, and thank you for Carrie for sending me up, and thanks for anybody who's here listening. We're going to be going through the book today to explain how and why I came up with this strategy. So what I'm doing is I'm showing you how I built my team, how I built a team. So what I did is I took an adventure at our Arts Center College of Design in Pasadena with a lot of questions from Free Speech Radio, including, Free Speech Radio. And I pursued an education in those areas. And it came out to be an environmental design label, I guess. But what I was trying to do is come up and be part of a new technology that would build stronger houses so that earthquakes and fires would be less prone to destroy these things. I thought there might be another way to go. And I thought the round shape was really the way to go. And I still do think that round shapes are stronger than square shapes. And that's what we're going to talk about in the game. So if we start just with the beginning, so the introduction is pretty much this. It's a direct ripoff from someone that I was hearing at the time. Garrett Laporto had put out this thing called the Wayseer's Manifesto. And I just thought that this is the reason. Now, why I wrote this book is because I was involved with doing some fundraising and volunteering at public radio and Free Speech Radio. And I ran into a woman who was putting on a show. Her name is Diaki Diaz. And she had a show called The Artivist Show. And The Artivist Show was about artists and visionaries coming together and activists. And I just needed to be part of this. So I brought my lighting skills and basically gave them away to be part of the show. Of course, you do whatever you have to do. Diaki is fantastic, and she gave me my start. And she said to me, I said, I really want to be on stage next time. I have this great idea. We're going to be able to take this whole systems thinking that I learned at Arts Center College, and and she said to me, wait just 1 second. What you need to do is write a book. And I'm like, yeah, but I did all that in school. I don't want to do that anymore. Now you got to write a book about it. So thanks to Diaki Diaz. We'll start the show with that. And this is what came out of it. This is a little game called Play WholEarth Game. It's a game of trust and sharing. So if we just do that and think about what to play means, trust and sharing, and that everyone is in the game, because, well, a lot of people haven't found the game. They haven't found their game, A game is something that we do to switch the endorphins from this work and drudgery to something that will keep our minds going. I've been in a lot of different jobs on Earth, and I know that there are some jobs that will just take your mind away. You cannot use it. If you think too hard, you'll hurt. So that's my empathy, and this is how I solve the problem. So as we move through, it says, welcome, all you free thinkers and rule breakers. You can't stand the rules because you know in your heart there is a better way. You found your tribe. So welcome, sit down, relax. Let's go through the book. Let's talk about what we're doing here. So if you're reading this book, if you're here, you're a special person. And we're going to build from here a movement that is going to basically just put a straight arrow through what's going on in the world. And this keeps us, I can't speak for anybody but myself, But this type of thing keeps me in some type of manageable, what they would consider sane. Now, you know that it takes a crazy person to figure out a way to make other people think that you're not crazy. So let's start with that part, and that was another rip from John Trudell, one of my other good friends along the way, who said that, just I'm crazy. Whatever I think is completely nuts. So, do your own thinking is what it comes down to. So, I got to Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, and I was handed the, basically skill set through Jay Baldwin, who was a close friend and ally and confidant of Buckminster Fuller. And he came to our school to teach. I think he came to teach me, how to take that idea to the next level and to move it into a systems thinking level. Now, being there on the front line of the riot in Los Angeles, watching people burn their city after the Rodney King, complete, misjustice and there, that happened in Simi Valley, and I was in Simi Valley. I can't remember the timeline, whether it happened before or after, but soon in that timeline, the earthquake hit. And I was in construction, and I understood how these things go together. I had also taken an interest in early world trade, if you will, like trying to find a way to move commodities from Oxnard around the country or around the world, trying to get one, little edge into that business. It's absolutely almost impossible. I'm not quite sure how anybody gets into the trade business, but it's who you know, that's for sure. But it was fascinating watching this material move around, cement and steel and sugar and urea, and cement was primarily what I was looking at, because I was just fascinated with the whole idea, since I'd made some driveways and I'd, seen some big pours and so forth. And I also understood about asphalt and oil, and that most of the oil here in California is it's so thick and gooey that it's only used for roads primarily. It's not really used for any kind of car. And see, when people talk about energy, they don't really understand how we get material that turns into energy. I mean, of course, energy is everywhere, and we'll talk about that later in the book. But when we talk, we start with Buckminster Fuller, and because he really is the person who we look to see someone that really kind of got it. He was a victim of, I don't know, he lost a child early on through some type of malnutrition or polio or some kind of, and I have to look at the details of this, and you should go back and find out what it was exactly that brought him really to his knees. And you have this kind of desperate prayer as to God, please I'll do anything, what can I do? And so it turned him around. And in that same time at Simi Valley, for some reason, I was given this charge of, like, you are who you are and you are where you are. It's here. You're here to do whatever I tell you to do. And in this case, it's to help as many people as possible in the short amount of time that you have left on the planet. I mean, that it came exactly in those words for me. And, let's do what we can in a short amount of time to do what we can in the short amount of time, and we have just a few minutes left in stoppage time. So let's get busy. And this is what's going on now in current understanding of the level of consciousness that a lot of you out there are familiar with. If you're familiar with this program, or with Carrie, or with KPFK, or KCSB, or Pacifica Radios, or Free Speech Radio, then we have to do our own homework. No one does it for us. But checking in today with Amy Goodman, who I feel like is is one of my key players. You know, good information is required to make good decisions. We know this to be true. You know, have you ever heard that information is power? Right? Without free speech radio, we can't really get, you know, and we're still getting, you know, information that's slightly tainted and slightly distorted. Now, this is where Buckminster Fuller comes in again, because when he's going on about things, he's creating models that have no distortion whatever. They completely examine what the framework is through geometric logic and through mathematics. And his Dymaxion map is something that we really want to switch over to, because with this map, we start to see the world differently. And it takes this leap of imagination to really be able to see the world as it should be, not as it is right now. So here's what we know to be true. As long as the grass shall grow, and as long as the wind shall blow. This is the time we're looking forward to. We want to see the long view of things and not the short-term, quick buck, quick make a deal, sell some golden shoes or some steak or vodka. Seriously, you know, sell a bill of goods. You know, now it really is a question of, you know, do you know the difference? And remember, this is part of the polarity that we talk about in the laws of the universe. There's a right and wrong, there's a half true, there's a half falsehood. But now this Dymaxion map is so special. This is really the way we see the world in an undistorted way. Now, to see the world without distortion. And this particular map, we're seeing top down. We can see, this is what caught me. The first time I actually saw this map, I saw it right away. Now, this is from what we were on, is we were on the path of understanding the basic game board. This is the game board of the world game that we were talking about. It's called Play WholEarth Game, because I made WholEarth instead of world. I made two worlds into one word that says the same thing, okay? But it's just a game, right? We're in a game of trust and sharing. So you got to trust me. Well, you don't have to trust me. You have to trust yourself. So by playing this game, we start to develop our trust, our self, you know, how we trust the world and how we can move forward. And which includes, you see, now this is where we start including everybody, because without this law, I mean, this is the law. The law is that we are all in the all. Everything is in the all. There's no, I mean, let's think about it for a second. So put up that map. Let's go ahead and put that map again. Anything outside that? This is a flat map. This is the only flat map that has been patented that actually describes the continents without distortion. And it's interesting too, because it's a top-down kind of vision that you would see maybe from a spaceship or something else, you know. And it just shows us now how things are distributed. Like, look, don't you see the hot climate areas? You see that? That is actually what's going on. You see now moving forward and southern of that, then you have Antarctica is kind of going to be that way. Now, what I'm trying to do is start to see how we can move this type of mapping into, you know, the general news cycle would be great. Just to bring this up on a general news cycle and have the current affairs happening in real time on a Dymaxion map to see where in the world it's really taking effect and who is getting affected most. So this is where we start with. That's why I captained Buckminster Fuller, because with this map we can chart a course. As any sea captain knows, you've got to have you've got to have your understanding of the stars and your understanding of latitude and longitude and what time it is. With those things, you can project where you are anywhere on a spherical thing. Isn't that exciting? So now Bucky is a Navy man. He took himself, he did not go to Harvard like his other siblings, evidently, or somebody in his family. There was a huge thing about him not going to Harvard was a big issue for him. But he took a track into the Navy, and I guess started in the Merchant Marine and then moved through into the military, and then used that understanding of how to chart the course of how to create a spaceship that we call Spaceship Earth that would take care of all of the crew. All of the cast and crew are taken care of on this small, tiny dust speck floating in the middle of nowhere on the far end of the galaxy. But this little dust speck has not been, we're not alone on this dust speck. The question is, what is really happening on this dust speck? Why is this little dust speck such an important dust speck? And that's why we're all here together to start getting, having some fun with it. Let's start to play the WholEarth game and think, how can we get ourselves out of the situation we're in now? Because it's coming our way. Some things are coming that we cannot stop, and the only thing that we can do is be ready. Now, I'm one of those. I'd rather be ready for the thing and have my stuff, and then when it comes, I knew that I'd done everything I could. And then it comes to, is that the best you could do? That's another long story of how I was raised to find, is that the best you can do? So I'm here to ask you, as your coach, get up on that field. Let's go to practice. Don't be late. Practice, practice, practice. If you're not excited about something bigger than yourself, then you've got to get something that's bigger than yourself. In this case, I tend to be overdo everything. So musician, yep. Craftsperson, I try. Try is all you got to do. Big fan of the 1%. Just try. Keep that up, please. Thank you. Keep that other thing up, that graphic. Thank you. Artist, coach, player. See that? Well, if the answer is no, the response is, huh? What? Find something you like and get busy. Start practicing. If the answer is yes, we'll go get on it. Keep going. So I'm going to be practicing drums in a few hours, because I practice a little bit every day. And the more I practice, the better I get. I'll tell you that. That's what happens. So is there someone out there who's better than me? Everyone. That's my feeling too, right? If you feel like that, you're in the right place. You're on the right team. If you feel like everybody's better than you and you're just the one struggling, come on in. The water's fine. There's a place for you. It's going to be right next to me as we continue to play the game. And Carrie, there's a seat next to Carrie and the rest of the team. Now let's get going. We're going to start to introduce the team. So basically, get something you love and stick with it and go for it. And my buddy over here, Mark Twain, wanted to sit in today. He said, get Dolly out of here. It's too crazy. It's too wacky. That Dolly picture that I like to have here was the Abraham Lincoln. So I suggest strongly that everyone goes to the Google that they use and type in Salvador Dali, Abraham Lincoln. And I'll see you You'll be a different person when you're done with that. But Mark Twain and I have spent some time together. I really enjoy his work and his story because, you know, if you really spend some time with Mark or Sam, then you know he's just a regular guy, one of us, you know. Now he used his skills to create these persona of Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer, but these are really what's going on. And of course, Jim, the slave who got in a pickle. If you really go into the story of that and how it was resolved, we might talk about that in another episode. But as we're moving forward, we're stepping away from Buckminster Fuller. So Bucky Fuller was already dead when I met him. You know, he had done all this work and I was handed this information. They said, you know, you want to build houses, you want to build a lot of houses for a lot of people. Why don't you just like, here, stop, meet this guy. Okay, next, boom. This is, you know, Art Center College of Design is not for the weak-hearted. It's designed to get you, well, fit. We're here to change things. We are here to move forward. I'm going to move. The next slide is John Todd, if you got that lined up. So John Todd was the next person that I was introduced to in an academic way. And what he was doing was talking about biofiltration. Now, water, you know, first we need to have the house, okay, then we need to have the water. So we have to bring the water or make the water available. This is something we need to be concerned with because water is life. There's no question. You know, oil is for pumping and water is for fighting. And this is what's going on around the world, honestly. And water is under attack and we have to use it properly, conserve it properly. We have to, sure, you can leave that up for a minute. If there's anything like a picture of John Todd for now, but this is fine. Leave this alone. If I can get this up bigger, this would be great. So what we're talking about is a process. It's a living machine process. And I was introduced to him at through Art Center. And I went out and I met with a project that he was working on in Taos, New Mexico. And I was at this point convinced entirely, and I still am, this is the way to grow ourselves clean. So wherever there's a situation of water that is not to the level that it was when we found it, for instance, somebody threw a lot of pesticide or if they put into the water all kind of industrial runoff, and you could just go ahead and imagine, and believe me, whatever you think you know about pollution and destruction, it's just a tip. But we've got a lot of work to do. Now, this is the job. You see, moving forward, our job is to grow things clean. And I believe that there is probably some future in working with the massive polluters to help them remediate and also provide the 5 things we need to live on Earth, which are housing, water, food, energy, and something to do. It has to be something meaningful. We cannot just be cranking a lever that does not, okay, sleeping in a box and going and cranking a lever is not a life. That is something you do with a machine. And what we're trying to do now is to make sure that we hold on to our humanity in the process of improving our environment so that it can work for all things. And what we're seeing here is the John Todd living machine technology. So if we stay with this course, this is the only way out. It's the only way out. So keeping the water, using the water in a whole system. How much water do we need for our village? How much can we keep? How much can we move forward? It's fascinating, and it's a never-ending. This is the future. Growing things is a sustainable stewardship program the weekend, and seed balls are coming up through our program to give people long-term sustainable occupation. There you go. Thanks, John. Definitely, I steal everything. These guys, none of this stuff that I'm telling you is my own comeuppance. You know, what I'm showing you, what I'm showing your audience, what I'm giving you is a university level education in what's happening in green and applied technologies. You know, anticipatory design science must infer that I'm using my skills to see a little bit into the future, knowing that there's going to be need for a place to sleep. Let's say after the dust settles in all of these war-torn situations, for every school they bomb, we got to build another school. For every village, we need to go and redo it. I mean, this has been going on so long. It's beyond imagining. And to talk and hear the people there, you know, they're just regular folks and they just have kids and they just want to get on with their life. So it's for our, you know, this is for what we're doing. If you know anybody who listens to what we listen to, then you should tell them to listen to what we're talking about, because we're going to get right to straight line Lance type trajectory. My name is Lance, so I can go straight to the point and get to the point. Because what does the word sustainability mean if nobody's even knows what the hell it means? So what it means to me is that you need 5 things for every living thing. And so it's our job to make it for ourselves first and then help other people do it. And this is the picture you just saw as our next person to talk about is Christopher Alexander, of course. And let's see where we are in time. So looks like we're doing pretty good with time, I think. Christopher Alexander is a mathematician, polymath, musician who saw the music in the built environment and was able to create the mathematical poetry, if you will, in his works. His life works, of course, are pattern language, timeless way, and there's a few others, but the pattern language is what we like. Do you see this kind of thing? Can you put that last slide back? So now that I know the language too, these architectures is embodying several different things going on here. This is like the ascension of man. Can't you see that? As we start wide and then we narrow our focus to the apex of the roof. See? Now, and look at the most beautiful woodwork you can imagine too. I know people who do that kind of work too, and I'm going to talk about him in another episode. The people who do big timber work without any nails. So, coming back to that, let's see, going down the line. So, well, moving through the thing. So, Christopher Alexander shows us or asks us to remember the feeling. Do not lose the feeling. Now, what you're showing there is part of this. When you get into, when I was taught academic architectural history, the movement was, of course, away from this type of wasteful material in order to get the clean steel and glass line of Mies van der Rohe. The gingerbread versus the straight line. It was that simple when I studied this subject. But now it's gotten a whole different, because the straight line and the lack of any type of feeling in the design has gotten so prevalent that we have lost sight of what it is that actually makes a thing alive. And this is what we need to experiment with. And this is what's going on today in my own practice. Because no matter how many times you repeat this type of situation, it's a practice. And each time you put together a design for a community or a house or something, it's just never ends. Is that the best you can do? Does this meet all of the requirements required by the person using the building and the person who is so forth? So next we move on to the fantastic. Do you have the picture of Paolo Solari then? Next. Yeah, so now the big thinker. So Arcosante is really exciting. Remember, so now we're looking for the feeling of architecture in the timeless way with the pattern language that says that this guy really knows what he's talking about. And Paolo Solari was a visionary who created this word called arcology. And I think that's what I'm trying to do too. I love this idea of combining architecture with ecology. Is there any pictures of examples of his work? There you go. So this is what's happening with this is it's designed as an asp to capture the sunlight as it drifts across the face of this complex. And this is very exciting. Now, I'm sure there was other ones going on, and I'm very myopic in my upbringing because I was given a few examples of this is one guy. Of course, I guess there's a trail that people follow between him and Frank Lloyd Wright because he was influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright to become part of the ecology and become part of the landscape. But it's really nothing part of the landscape when you put this kind of concrete in the middle of the desert. And this project is in the middle of the desert in Cordes Junction. But what's exciting me, of course, was the curved arches and his use of round shapes. And I'm fascinated with this tube shape, which seems to be stronger than any other shape against the elements. So a long-term architect coffee cups available. And don't forget to visit my website at playWholEarthGame.org. It's still way under construction, but if you sign in at the bottom, I will send you a coffee cup. I promise. On this show, this day, June 11th, 2024. Okay. So arcology is something that we have to be involved with. Does the building fit with the environment or not? Can we sustain this environment? Now we're looking at this directly straight ahead with the experiment they're calling Las Vegas right now. Does Las Vegas have any water? Does it have any? It's going to dry up. I mean, it's going through its groundwater so fast it doesn't understand how to do anything, and it hasn't saved a drop, as if there's no tomorrow. So there's a lot of this going on. We're living like there's no tomorrow. And this is why, again, we want to just look at the game. Remember, okay, first to breathe, then to remember, okay, housing. Did I have a place to sleep tonight? I got something to drink. Thank you. I'm having my coffee. Breakfast right after this because I'm always too nervous before I go on show. I can't eat. It gives me the energy to tell you all that you're going to be fine. We're in this thing together. There's no way out. We're in the all. There's no way out. Let's figure this thing together. So this is my team I'm bringing you basically to get us out of this mess that we're in environmentally. Just see what you think at the end of the day. Of course, the next guy, Massimo. Let's take a minute. Massimo Fukuoka. I mean, come on. This is the one straw revolutionary. Are you serious? You send me this guy? Of course. Now, Massimo Fukuoka, again, same type of story. went to the university in Japan to learn agriculture, and just got head over heels into the alcohol and drug abuse and the lifestyle of the campus life, and really couldn't keep his shit together. So he decided to turn his focus away from all that, as we have to. Everybody has to play in the land of childish people. But knowing when to stop is the key to a long and happy life. Fukuoka stopped whatever foolish business he was doing very early in the game and decided to get busy with the seed, the one straw revolution. What do we need? What's the least amount of work to produce the greatest amount of food? Okay. And I do not particularly like the word work, he says. Human beings are the only animals that have to work, and I think that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Other animals make their living by living, but people work like crazy, thinking that we have to do this in order to stay alive. The bigger job, the greater challenge, the more wonderful they think it is, it would be good to give up that way of thinking and live an easy, comfortable life with plenty of free time. So that's the point. Now, in the Japanese society after World War II, the reconstruction was such that everyone just went to the factory and decided to go and get a job. And it was provided as a cradle to grave type of opportunity. And this was happening throughout the Asian countries, where to just sign up for Honda meant you were signed up for Honda. You never left Honda. You stayed there until you died. Fukuoka stepped away from all that and said, wait a second, we want us to do a lot more leisure time. It's time to just do a lot less work and get a lot more abundance. Why don't we do this other thing? So thus, coming up with the seed ball kind of concept, moving as you're walking along the path, you would be dropping seed balls designed to leave a path of edible food, which comes to our next person, Jeff Lawton. Jeff Lawton took that baton and moved right along. Now, how to food forest the desert. This is the way. We know now, and we're using his techniques in the Gobi Desert, creating little swales so that the water can be trapped by whatever means by the wind to create a little valley of green spacing. And he is so inspirational. I hope we can get him on the program coming up shortly, because he's now, of course, into composting. This is our next, it's a lot of small is the big idea. We are going, when we finally sorry, spoiler alert, if you were hoping for some huge climactic earth-shaking maneuver, it is for you to go out into your little patio and get yourself a garden and some worms and see what goes on. Jeff Lawton is our food forester, so we're trying this all over. We've got some of this in Ventura County that I can take you to, and we can see what the results are before and after. And I think you'll be amazed as we move forward. So that's Jeff Lawton. That's our food area. So these two are the focus moving forward, is we're going to grow more food for less energy, for less water, and we want to basically create a food network for the people in our next adventure to live and travel without harm around the country. Now, I just want to bring this to a very pointed moment. Just at this time on June 11th, 2024, there's been an election in Europe. And what looks to be the trend there is everyone is, going back to feudalism. The borders are closing up. It takes a lot more energy to get a passport. You can't just go travel and wander around Europe anymore. No, it's going to be a lot of paperwork moving forward, which is just a very interesting sign of what's to come. Now, remember, too, that we have the largest contiguous landmass in North America, and that's going to be good for us as we move forward because, we're not here to pull any punches. There's stuff coming at us as if a steamroller was just coming down the track. So we want to be ready for anything. So if we're playing the whole Earth game, we're going to be ready for anything just in case. Whatever you decide to do, it's going to have a better outcome. I promise. It's not going to hurt anybody. Nobody will get hurt in the process of playing. If you do, you weren't playing. And I ain't playing. Now, the next one is energy. So let's talk about energy for a minute. What do you know about this thing called energy? Does energy, oil, coal, or nuclear? Is that energy? I'll give you a second on that. Let's see, wind. Wind is everywhere all the time. It is energized. What's going on with these hurricanes and so forth is you can see the energy caused by wind by itself. Now, the thought is, can we harness that for the good of us and without having to use the oil, coal, and nuclear? So somehow, as you know, we've been cornered into this choice that's been a bad choice for most people and a good choice for very few people. And they made a lot of money, and that money is going to create some type of political environment that we can only guess about at this moment in time, in the time that we're talking to you. But now, energy is everywhere, and we're going to get some. So what I talk about very simply is to design a project that will have its own energy source to at least 120% of what is required. And as we're talking, the goal is to create small packages of energy that can do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of climate control primarily. Right now, we're focusing on climate control, how to keep a place at a livable temperature, even in the most insanely hot days. Seems pretty obvious, doesn't it, that we should have some small thing. So now this might be something, anyway, I'm not going to talk about that, but we're going to get into that in another episode as we move forward. Energy. Now, the last person I put in this thing is occupation, and I put Walt Disney as my primary go-to guy. And I have to tell a story of Walt Disney. And now I did not get to meet Walt Disney. I almost met Walt Disney, but I did meet Roy Disney, and I was one of those lucky kids who was around that time. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in that same summer is when Richard Nixon drove the monorail for the first time around Disneyland. And he brought his kids and his wife, and it was pretty fun. And you can find that. There's a clip somewhere. Well, old Disney clips have that well documented because it was quite a big event. Walt Disney, right? No, he's a December kid, but Sagittarius is just as unpredictable as anything. But the thing was with Walt Disney is that we all had the same thing about going to the edge of demise. I know that there's a story. The reason there's a mouse next to him, if you don't know this story, is why there's a mouse is that because he was at his wit's end. He was at the bottom of had nothing left, but he kept a little mouse in his pocket. And he used to feed that mouse, and that mouse became his inspiration to keep going one more day. That puts Walt in the game. He's a key, the king of the game. Now, as a kid, I got to go backstage and see behind the scenes. So, honestly, if I had a wish, would be going to work for Walt Disney. My big dream would be to be part of that Imagineering. Well, I found somebody who's greater than Walt Disney, and that was Bucky Fuller, of course. And he's thinking globally. So Walt is thinking, now he had this plan, of course. Now, the other thing that I like is because my dad liked, so my dad was named Raymond Charles, and he was responsible for a big part of the Prudential Insurance Company. And he made sure that his ethics were very, very clean. I once remember him having a big idea about sending a box of fruit right back to the owner. Not acceptable. This was not acceptable. He felt it was a small bribe, and he had nothing to do with it. His ethics are such that the company is strong today as it ever was, probably, and it was very strong. But because of that, he was able to use that money to invest in certain things and long-term sustainable projects, not so sustainable projects too. Prudential, of course, had a diversified portfolio designed for a long-term sustainable income to service the debt required by life insurance companies of that magnitude and size. But he did have a little bit of fun, and one of those was to be able to invest, or I think Prudential might have had some small stake, or you might see Prudential in the label of who contributed to the presidential exhibit or one of these exhibits, a naming rights type of opportunity, which is good for public and it's good for everything. So Walt Disney is kind of considered a dear friend and kind of a huge inspiration. And when I got to Art Center, I felt like I had finally gotten into the real workings of what it's like to be a real Imagineer and see this theme park for what it is, though. It looks pretty good on the outside. This is theme park architecture at its finest. And theme parks are there for fun, but they're not necessarily there for a long time. And you can see all over the world where people try to emulate the Disneyland success, and how even in Disneyland they can't sustain the success. It's not sustainable. It's just it's a picture of what life could be like. Do you see? For me, it's a picture of what life could be like. And I wrote about this in college, that Main Street USA would be the museum piece to go back and remember what it actually looked like. Because we were losing downtown so fast with the mall expansions during the 70s and the 80s and the 90s that we very nearly lost downtown Santa Barbara. We very nearly lost downtown Pasadena. We basically did throw down downtown Los Angeles, just right under the bus, just ground it down, and then all of the blight and so forth after the riot, until finally in the last few decades there's been a resurgence and a revitalization of some of these downtowns. Now, this is where I came in to Art Center. Some of my professors were working on that project in Pasadena. We had come up with a recipe. Now, their pattern, they found the pattern to make the downtown Pasadena vibrant again, make downtown Los Angeles vibrant again, make downtown Santa Barbara vibrant again, make downtown Ventura was early on the list of being vibrant. And now we're in an experiment about after COVID. Like, what happened with COVID is they shut down all of a sudden these streets that were designed for a certain type of flow were completely changed. So we don't know quite. We're still in shock about what really did happen in this last few years. But in the game, we know that we need. Here we go. Duh, it's too big for us. Okay. This is why we get back to this small game and the small book. Now, you could not, if once you start on this rabbit hole, I hope that you will be hooked and continue on with it and beat me in every turn. I want you to win. That's all I want. So now we move forward, back away from that. So we've got housing, water, energy. Oh, well then, see, if Walt Disney was like kind of a little bit of a sweet thing. I love sweets. And I love, Walt Disney. I love the idea of Disneyland. Everyone wants to know about the happiest place on earth. Let's find that. I mean, Epcot Center was about, doing the United Nations, with a theme park, right? I mean, everybody gets along at Epcot Center, but they can't just step outside and get along in the parking lot. They're probably having some type of fisticuffs in the parking lot, getting who's going to get out first over to the highway, which jammed up with too many cars because mass transportation wasn't part of the deal, or because here's what happened. So much fun. Disney wanted to put a monorail onto the 405 and the 101 to get people to come to Anaheim. Can you imagine if there was a theme park type of mass transportation right on 405 now? How many cars would that have eliminated from that feeble highway system? What about 101? Same thing. Up and down. We need to have, a re-examining of all the infrastructure and all of the things moving forward. But for now, we're going to continue with the game. Now, part of this, the next person that I'm bringing on, is Nikola Tesla. Now, Nikola Tesla and I are both July people. Between, July 9th and 10th. Now, I'm a July 14th person. So anybody in July gets my attention. I'm a Cancerian. We're all in this together. I can see that way. Now, this is a guy, again, who knows, he knew how to, I don't know if he did or not. I can't really speak for him. He's not here. But I will say that one thing he talked about was bringing spirit and science together. And that once we could do that one thing, we would come more in 1 year than we had done in the last 100 years. Now, a lot of people might look at Steve Jobs and Apple Computer as being, I might look at that as being the next level of spirit and science. Now we're into artificial intelligence technology. And the question is, is it with us or for us? But here's where I go back to Bucky Fuller. And he says that when something comes along, when a piano top, if you're in a shipwreck, forget about the motorboat that fell on the electric thing and somebody getting electrocuted with shark attack and all this stuff. It's too funny. But if you're in a shipwreck, if you are in a real shipwreck and piano top comes along and you can use that as a life preserver, don't hesitate for a second. Get right on that, and the sharks can go around you and you'll be safe. Take care of yourself first. But if you're going to design a life preserver, you're not going to look like a piano top. So what we're going to talk about is making the world our life preserver again, So Nikola Tesla rediscovered the idea of energy being a infinite source. Now, here again, this is back to why we play the game, because we will want to remind ourselves that we're part of this infinite source. This energy that he is talking about, the spirit that he is talking about, is something that you and I are both part of. We cannot get away from this either. This is part of where we live. So we have to bring the spirit, the mind, the body together. And then once we do this, we become that thing that we discovered earlier. By playing this game, you are in a position to have full control of everything you need, just in case. But primarily, you're an eternal game. You have eternal lives. You've been here before, and you'll be here again. The question is how, the question is this the best you can do? And are you happy with what you're doing? So we keep going. Now, the history of this thing comes into these other folks. How to deal with the economy is the next big question. The occupation part of it is really where we're going to with economy. So this is Amory Lovins, and I got to meet him personally at Arts Center College of Design in Pasadena. He was, again, another person just right after another. It was Jay Baldwin, and then Amory Lovins came over. Amory Lovins had a varied interest in our college. We are the visionaries of tomorrow. The people who, go through Arts Center have to be, and this is why I'm here talking with you, because I haven't completed my personal goal to somehow make Arts Center proud of me, as I would like to make my father proud of me. I'd like to make, I want to do something, I want to bring this information so that we can all make a better decision as we move forward. So here is the author, the co-author, because it's been taken as a three-way authorship of a book called Natural Capitalism, which came out through this Rocky Mountain Institute, who were doing the data based on green technology. On another program, we will talk with L. Hunter Lovins, who is the wife of Amory Lovins, and together they've been a bulwark of information into why green is the most profitable way to go. What we don't spend in oil, coal, and nuclear is what we give to our kids. This is Paul Hawken. He's the third of the triad of the Rocky Mountain Institute people. So you've got L. Hunter Lovins, you've got Amory Lovins, and you've got Paul Hawken, and they all claim authorship of a book called Natural Capitalism. Now, moving forward, there has been, Blessed Unrest. So Paul Hawken is kind of more of the historian of the group and is really a great storyteller. And his new book, Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse climate warning, by Paul. I mean, seriously? Hopefully we'll get him to talk about his book as we move forward, because I want to know, what the heck is that about? Really what it is, see? Ask me and I'll tell you. Using less, waste none. We want to eliminate, this idea of waste is what has, in my opinion, the way they make profit is to waste as much as they can. You just waste more, use more, and then it ends up the result that we have now. It just doesn't seem right. So the takeaway I had is to use less and waste none. And look at everything in such a way is that, can I use this? Can we use this over and over again? Now, in the case of the hurricanes. There are techniques to use that material, to grind it up, to leave it where it is and make it a different material instead of taking it into a truck with a tractor, 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 hours, put it into the back of the truck, take it to a landfill. What do you do? Well, landfills, oh goodness. Don't get me started. Those are resources for the future. So that's the industry moving forward, is to see this thing in a larger picture. Now, of all that, so you've got blessed unrest, you've got finer future, you've got natural capitalism, and these are the most stalwart guideposts as to why we need a green economy moving forward, and how that will be the sustainable model moving forward. Okay, what we're looking for in biotechnology is something that can self-replicate. What we're looking for in energy production is something that can produce way more than it needs, but at the point of use, instead of losing it all, wasting energy on transmission line, is another story. Okay. Energy, jobs, having something fun to do. So now, but as we move forward in other chapters, we're talking about how we move around the world. You know, human beings have been on the move. This is part of our DNA, is to be able to travel and be able to move. Now, as these natural situations come upon us, we need to be able to be nimble. Having a large landmass in a very habitable spot on Earth is going to be to our advantage as American natives coming forward. Now, I might get some comments. If you're born here, you are native to this area. That's it. If you're born somewhere else, then you're native to that area. So we're all native to somewhere. So it's not a time to pick up your sticks and stones and start throwing them about who's different, because remember one thing, we're all in this together. This is one whole earth, not many small fractions. So that's why the name is such, to remind you that you're here to play. You're here to play on one whole earth, and it's a game. And I don't know if we're getting out of town, but it seems like I've come to the end of my story. So I hope to see you next time. Carrie, come on in.
Carrie Harrison with you, and this has been the Whole Earth Game program with Alanson Charles. It's wonderful to be able to get this kind of mental upgrade and insight into the answers for so many of the questions we have about how just to navigate the often impossible shoals of life. Without a visionary like Alanson Charles, it would be even more difficult. But now you have that education and a toolkit in order to get ahead and be part of the solution and create the world in which you want to live. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been Play Whole Earth Game program.
This is the Whole Earth Game program. Because everything depends on it.